chili cheese stuffed meatballs and the Kamado Bono? Why not? Welcome along to Barbecue Life, where great barbecue doesn't cost a fortune. Today we're doing stuffed meatballs. So we're going to do them with some chili and some cheese, and just some cheese so that you can mix it up, but fundamentally the process is exactly the same. So let's crack straight on with our meatballs. So into a big bowl I've got 2 cloves of grated garlic. So these were quite small cloves, so if you want to use just one bigger clove, that's completely up to you. But we've grated it in there so that we've got a really fine pieces. I find that when you crush it, it's still quite fibrous. If you grate it, it breaks them fibres up, so it will mix all the way through our meat a bit better. So for our meat, we have got 500 grams of beef mince and we have got 500 grams of pork mince, and we're going to need to be mixing those together. We also need a couple of binders in there, so we've got 100 grams of breadcrumbs and an egg. So just get that all into the bowl together. Then with your hands, if you want to glove them up, you can. I've gloved them up because it's easier for when I'm filming. But if you want to be going in ungloved, I recommend taking off all your jewellery, because you can end up with it all over the place as you're trying to get this all incorporated. But you just want to get all that and squeeze it together. So when we're making burgers, we try and make patties like really loose and things like that. With this, you want the complete opposite. We need everything all incorporated so that all the flavours are evenly distributed all the way through each and every meatball. If we make them quite loose, then we're going to have some that's higher in pork content, and some that are higher in beef content, and some that have got a load of breadcrumbs in them, and some that haven't. So really make sure you squeeze that in. And then once you think you've finished, break it up into some large sort of cricket ball pieces so that you can see if you have missed any pieces of them breadcrumbs or garlic or whatever. And if you do have that, then make sure you carry on squeezing through. It's a good 3 or 4 minute process to get it really well incorporated. So once we've done that, we can crack straight on with making our meatballs. So I've already cubed up some cheese. I'm using red Leicester because it's got a slightly higher melting point than a standard cheddar. And if you use anything that is really high in fat content, like a nice strong cheddar, which I'd love to use, but they just bubble up and you lose it all out of the meatball itself. So you want something with a higher melting point. Mozzarella is fantastic, but again I find that quite bland. So red Leicester I find is the biggest happy medium. And I've also got some chilies on the board here, but if you want to omit the chilies because it's too hot for you, then you do that. So what we do is we take a small handful of the mince, and this is not easy to do one-handed, where I'm trying to keep one hand clean and one hand unclean. But we just take a small amount and then we flatten it out. We place our chili on there, and then we place our little cube of cheese on there, and we squeeze it up and around into something that is just smaller than a golf ball, probably 2/3 the size of a golf ball. We don't want them too big because they're going to fall out of our subs that we're making later on, or they're going to be too big if you want to add this to a pasta dish. So really make sure you incorporate it all the way around, and then squeeze it and roll it so that we can make sure that cheese is dead in the middle, so that we've not got it all out of the top and we haven't got any cracks for our cheese to escape. I'll show you again with just the cheese one. So we've got that little disc, we've got our cheese in the middle, bring it all up around the top, gather it together, squeeze it, roll it around so we've got a nice perfect ball. Once you've got them all made, as I say, if you want to do chili ones, you can do chili ones. If you want to just do cheese, but leave them on that chopping board and get them in the fridge. We want to get them cold, because again that's going to help the cheese not melt so much or not ooze out of the ball so much. We still want it to melt, but we don't want it to be popping out the top. And it's inevitable, you are going to get some in a minute, you're going to see some that are oozing out the top. But if you make sure it's really in there and there's not too many cracks, you don't get too many, and you only get a little bit of seepage out the top of there. So get them in the fridge, get them really cold, and we can get the Kamado Bono lit. So we've gone in with some Texas Club charcoal in the bottom, then we're going in some fire lighters, get them lit in the standard way, lid open, bottom vent open, wait for your charcoal to take, shut down your lid, top vent open, let that air rush through. When the ceramic is warm to the touch, that's when we start dialing in our vents. So we want to aim for anywhere between 160 and 180 degrees C today. So that is a finger and a half to 2 fingers in the bottom vent, and 1.5 to 2 on the top vent depending on how warm your day is and what wind settings you've got and what charcoal you've got, because all of this varies. Ambient temperatures, different charcoals can give you varying effects, but the more you cook on things, the more you're going to be more experienced to know what vent settings you're going to need to do this. We also need to set up for 50-50 indirect cooking and direct cooking, so we're just going to put in one half moon deflector plate over the back, and as I say, that's going to give us a nice indirect zone over the back and a direct zone over the front. So once we've dialed in the temperatures and the meatballs have had an hour or so in the fridge, we can get them loaded onto that indirect zone. So you can see from this camera footage, I didn't really check the angle before putting it on, so it's not the best, but you can see that we've got a nice roaring piece of charcoal in the bottom. We've got that deflector plate and where the meatballs are going. What I did do with these meatballs just before I put them on is I did give them a little dusting with some rub. So I used some herby garlic butter from the Rusty Barbecue Company. There is a discount code for that, and I'll make sure I leave it in the description below. He's got some fantastic rubs out at the moment. He's just brought out a new one. He's the first UK barbecue rub to receive 3 stars in the UK Taste Awards, I think it is. But he's the first person to receive 3 stars, which means that it's called exquisite flavour is what they class that as. So I'm really proud of Russ over there for being able to do that. He's also the wizard behind my rub, umami oomph powder, and we'll leave you an advert for that just in a little while if you do want to hear some more about it.
Is your food dull and boring? Or even worse, so overpowering you can't actually taste the food? Then you should try new umami oomph powder from Barbecue Life. The new, healthy, savory, no salt rub that's perfect for any occasion. Your food with added oomph.
We've got them meatballs on, we've got our lid shut, and we want to leave them for 20 minutes just to start cooking through. We don't want them completely cooked through before we start our next stage, because then they're going to be overcooked by the time we get to having sauces and things like that. So I've made sure I've kept them separate on the grill, so I know where my chilli ones are and I know where just my cheese ones are. So if you are doing 2 different types, keep an eye on what is what on your chopping board and keep an eye on what is what on the barbecue. So they've had their 20 minutes, now we need to go on with some skillet. So I've got a large skillet that I'm going to make up a tomato passata in, and I've got a little skillet that we're going to glaze some of these balls with barbecue sauce. So we get these skillets on, let them come up to temperature. That's going to take another 5 minutes. So now the meatballs have had 25 minutes in total, and then we can start cooking our passata. So we want to go in with a little bit of oil in there and some finely diced onion. Get that in the bottom, and then we're going to start adding our other ingredients. So once the onion has sweated down, we are going to be adding a garlic clove, and we don't want to be leaving that in there for too long because it will burn. So only about 30 seconds. Once you really start to smell that garlic coming through, now we need to break our fry. So we're going to be going in with our herbs, which is a teaspoon of oregano and a teaspoon of basil, and we're going to be going in with some Worcester sauce, and that's just going to break the fry, and then we can then go in with our tomatoes. So I'm using a bit of a Jamie Oliver hack today. So we have got plum tomatoes instead of just our general chopped tomatoes, and what you do is you just squeeze them through your fingers and it just bursts, and you end up with lots of little strands of tomato rather than the whole tomato itself. And I agree with him, having tried just the chopped tomato method and then a plum tomato method, that the tomatoes are better in whole, that you can then either chop or squash yourself, than they are just the chopped ones. With the chopped ones you tend to get a lot of ends, so you get your little green stalky piece and things like that, and that never melts down into a sauce. You always have to make sure you get them out. So I do like the idea of squeezing the whole plum tomatoes. But we get them in, we give that a good stir, and then we just want to let that start to simmer away and thicken up. So once that's started to simmer, we can add our meatballs. So I'm just putting the cheesy balls, there's a good phrase, cheesy balls, the cheese stuffed balls into that passata. And if we do have any leakage of the cheese in the top, then I'll make sure that that goes on the top, because if we have that go too much into the sauce, it will just completely disperse out of the meatball and you lose the cheesy goodness out of that. So we want to get them all in there, and then we can turn them through the sauce so that we're getting a bit of sauce across the top, and that will kind of glaze and give us a bit more colour on that meatball themselves. Once we've got that done, I'll swap the pans over on the camera so you can see the other side a bit easier. And our ones with the chilli in, we're going to put these in a little pan. They don't quite fit, which is a little bit annoying. And then we're going on with a barbecue sauce. You can use any barbecue sauce you want, but I really like the Hawaiian Tropics barbecue sauce from Waz's Sauce Hut, and I'll just put some of that across the top, and then we toss them through, so we're making sure that they're all completely covered, exactly the same as what we did with the ones in the passata. Shut the lid, give them 10 minutes to tack up. In that 10 minutes the meatballs are going to finish off cooking. They're going to cook even faster because they're now in a liquid, so you've got more steam going on in the barbecue. If you are worried about internal temperature, then you can go in with a probe. What you've got to remember is you can't go right the way through to the middle, because that molten cheese in the middle is going to have a higher internal temperature than what the meat is. So you just have to be really gently going in. But once you've hit 74 with supermarket ground mince like what this is, you are going to be fine. But these were well up in the 80s by the time they'd had their 10 minutes in the sauce. So at this point it is now time to serve. So you can go several ways with these. We're cooking them in as a meatball sub, so we've got some French bread that we're going to put them in a minute. But if you want to cook these as a pasta dish, get some pasta on the go and then toss that through this as well. That is going to work equally well, and we have done spaghetti and meatballs previously on the channel. But back to these subs. So I've bought some French sticks, we've cut the ends off the French sticks and we've cut them in half, and that is just the right sort of length for getting 5 meatballs in there. And 5 meatballs and half a French stick and a little portion of chips on the side is going to fill your belly. We were completely stuffed by the time we'd finished this. So we're going to get these lined out. So with the passata ones, we get them in and then we can spoon some of the passata on the top. One of them, I'm not going to add any more passata because my daughter's boyfriend, he's not a massive fan of anything too saucy. So we're going to leave his a bit plainer. And then with the chili ones that are in the barbecue sauce, I had some of that passata left over, so I thought it might be nice to get that on the bread underneath. Then we'll get them barbecue meatballs into there. We'll grate some more of that red Leicester over the top. And we get them back onto the barbecue. Doesn't matter whether they're indirect or non-indirect, they're not going to be staying on there very long. You can shut your vents off now anyway, so you're saving all the charcoal, so you've not got a roaring heat underneath any that are indirect. But get them on, get that lid shut, couple of minutes, let that cheese just start to ooze, and then it is time to serve. So let's give it a taste. All melted. So jalapeno in there is a really nice addition to the cheese, so if you do like a bit of heat, then I do suggest whacking them in there as well. It's really nice with the barbecue sauce, but that is going to be equally as nice in the tomato sauce that we did as well. So if you like what we're doing here at Barbecue Life, then please do subscribe to the channel, make sure you like the video and leave me a comment. Thank you very much for watching. Cheers. Chili steak. So jalapeno in the back of my throat.